And after Roan dropped off Castell and told Castell to come back in a couple of days with another gift, he would bring him another friend, another dragon, to sit there and take him for a trip somewhere else. So, 3 days later, Castell comes back with a couple of books. Books are always good gifts for dragons. Dragons like books, dragons like knowledge. And he brought Elysia. Now, Elysia is a sea dragon, blue-green sea dragon. And Elysia likes books, likes knowledge. That's just kind of dragon that she is. And Elysia means heaven or paradise. That is what the word means. It comes from the word Elysium, which is a heaven or a paradise. So Elysia means heaven or paradise. And Elysia, being a sea dragon, believes that the seas and the oceans are paradise. That is her realm. And to her, there is nothing better than the ocean or the sea. And Castell comes up and gives her a couple of books, and she looks at them, and one of them is a math book. And okay, I can do a math book. I like numbers. I like working with math. And the other one is a cookbook, and she says, "Cooking. Does it show how to cook princes in the book?" Now, when she said that, of course, Castell sort of stood back a little bit, like, "You're not gonna cook me, are you?" And she laughed and said, "No, no, no, I'm not gonna cook you." A couple princes later on, in some places I might want to cook, but no, not you. Aron is a friend of yours, and if you're a friend of Aron's, okay, you're a friend of mine. I'll not cook you this time. Doesn't mean I won't do it next time, but I won't cook you this time. So after they chatted for a minute, and Aron said, "Well, I've got to go do some other things. I will leave you here with Elysia, and she will take you around and let you see some oceans." So yeah, okay, great. So he gets on Alicia's back, and she puts her book in her little bag that she has so she can carry her stuff around, and they take off flying. And Cass didn't realize, because of course he lives in a castle and on the land and everything, that water and oceans make up 70% of the planet. So Elysia, who is a sea dragon, takes up quite a bit. Her domain, and she's not the only sea dragon, she just happens to be a friendly one who's a friend of the Ronan. There are millions of sea dragons out there. They tend to hide in the oceans and things like that. But unless she's a friend of her own, so she's gonna be nice and take Castell around the sea. And first thing she does is she flies high and she flies over a lot of the oceans so that Castell can see how many different oceans and how large the oceans are. And he didn't realize, but oceans are all different. And they have different types of water in them. And yes, there are different types of water. And they have different salt contents and different things like that. And when you come up to a border of an ocean, in some places you can actually see where there is a line in the ocean where they do not mix. They will not Their water just will not come together because it's different water and it just doesn't like each other. Kind of funny, water don't like each other, but it is what it is. So Elysia flew around for a while and showed him several different oceans. And then she said, "Now we will stop seeing some of the things in the oceans." And he dove for the ocean. And Castilla said, you realize I don't swim well and I don't breathe underwater. It just don't work that way. I ain't built that way." And Alicia said, "Don't worry about it. With my dragon magic, I'm going to put you in a bubble. And this bubble will protect you. No, nothing can hurt you, and you'll be able to see, and you'll be able to breathe, and you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I ain't gonna let you drown yet." Um, Don't tempt me, that may come later. But no, I'm not going to let you drown. I promised you and I promised Tyrone that I would take you around and let you see things. So the first thing she does is she splashes into the cold water of the Antarctic Ocean. Fortunately, in this bubble where Castell is, he's nice and warm and safe and dry. So he's not worried about it. And he's looking around the ocean here, and he's seeing dolphins, and he's seeing seals, and he's seeing penguins, and he's seeing herrings and other fishes, and went down deep and saw cod and saw lungfish and saw some of the deep sea creatures that no one had ever seen before. He saw the giant squids and the octopuses and the huge man-eating sharks. And yes, sharks will eat man, but they will not eat a dragon. And as long as he's with the dragon, he's fine. Um, and he was able to talk to Elysia, and she was pointing out the different fish and what they did and what they ate. And she pointed out the sharks and said, they eat other fish and mammals and can't eat people. And he asked her, do they eat sharks? Do they eat dragons? No, 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 no. There's nothing here that eats dragons. Even the big orcas, which they flew up next to, and he was able to reach out and pet one. Orca is another name for a killer whale. No, there's nothing here in the ocean that will eat a dragon. The sea dragons are the top person here, and nothing will attack them or eat them. So as long as you are with me, nah, well, they're not gonna bother you. And after swimming, floating, flying around in the ocean, whatever word you want to use, they took off and they went to the Pacific Ocean. And the water was much warmer than the Antarctic Ocean. And even though he was dry and everything like that, he could feel the difference in the water. And this is okay, cool. And while he was in the Pacific Ocean, he saw different sharks and he saw different fish. And he saw things like clownfish and bass. And he saw the big manta rays and the stingrays. And he said, hey, this is kind of cool, all kinds of different fish. And he saw the salmon and the different types of salmon. And after they floated around there, he went to the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico. And she dove in there. And they floated around there and swam around. And he saw halibut and sailfish and swordfish and all the fish like this. Even saw the sawtooth fish, which got a great big saw on it, swordfish, and the marlin. And he looked around, and Elysia said, well, we're going to go to my hiding. We're going to go to a little secret place of mine called the Bermuda Triangle. And in the Bermuda Triangle is all kinds of things, human people things that, weren't supposed to be in the ocean. And Elysia said, well, these are boats and things like that that started poking around in dragons' homes and dragons' areas, and we want to be left alone. So all these reports of sea monsters that you have heard over the years, yeah, they're true. They're usually sea dragons. Because when people start messing around where the sea dragons are hiding and they're playing and they're just minding their own business, when people start getting in the way and starting to bother the dragons and things like that, the sea dragons, they want to be left alone. They don't want nobody to bug them. So they, in easy terms, they eliminate the pest. They do pest control. And the ships disappear, the pest goes away, and the dragons swim off or fly off. Happily ever after, and everybody's happy. The dragons are. Anyway. And then they went to the Atlantic Ocean. And they saw tuna fish. And they saw crabs, and they saw scallops and oysters and all kinds of things like that. And Castile was kind of surprised. He didn't realize all these different things lived in the ocean. And he saw sailfish and porpoise and dolphins and seals and walruses and all these things that live in the sea and the different sea plants, the different types of seaweed and sea grasses. He saw some sea snakes, and yes, there are snakes in the sea. They are not dragons, they are something totally different. Uh, Eels, electric eels, moray eels, and yes, an electric eel, if you touch it, will shock you. They do have the ability to put out an electric shock, and if the eel is big enough and you are little enough, it will zap you and you will be no more. So if you see an electric eel, the best thing to do is stay away from it. They use the electricity. That's how they catch their fish, their lunch. They sit there and just shock it, and then while the fish that it shocked, they have lunch. So yeah, and sea dragons kind of do the same thing. Sea dragons, because they are sea dragons, water and fire don't mix, so sea dragons don't shoot fire. They shoot electricity. So if you piss off a sea dragon, he will shock you just like an electric eel. Zap up, and away you go. Um, some sea dragons, um, different type of sea dragon. There's more than one type. Also shoot boiling water. They can't do kind of a combination. They take in the water where they would normally have fire. It heats up the water and it shoots out boiling water and scalds you and cooks you. You are instantly boiled. So you are now a boiled dinner instead of a fricassee dinner. Whatever. So after all this flying around the oceans and flying around the seas and everything like that, Castile said, "Hey, this is kind of cool. I didn't realize that there was all this in the oceans." And she flew over the boats and the ships, and it was dark out, so they didn't see her. Said they try to avoid people. We don't really like people. People are nuisances. So as a whole, we try to avoid people, but we will see them once in a while. As long as they leave us alone, we'll leave them alone. If they start poking at us, well, we poke back. Guess what? We poke bigger than they do. When ships try and harpoon them, thinking they're whales, or when they try and shoot them, thinking they're sea monsters, which where they are, the dragon will always win. So if you see a sea dragon, if you're out on a boat and you see a sea dragon, leave it alone, because if you poke it, it will come back, and when the fight's all said and done, the sea dragon is going to win, and you're going to be flopping around the ocean trying to figure out how to swim for 1,000 miles or drown. Now, sea dragons will not eat people. People taste bad. They don't like them. But they will just, brush up against them, shock them with their electric shock, or boil them with their water, and watch them sink and let the other fishes have them. Sharks will eat them. Other fish will eat um, people. So the sea dragons, while they won't eat the people, they will provide lunches for other critters down there. And, zap, bleep. Okay, hey, shark. There you go, pre-meal. The buffet was good. So, after going through all the oceans and all the seas and seeing the different colors, because oceans can be blue, they can be green, they can be kind of brown sometimes. It just depends on the type of water and the temperature of the water. It can be clear or it can be very dark and murky. And from the bottom of the ocean to the top of the ocean, there is fish everywhere. And some fish live at the bottom and some fish live near the top. Different layers and different fish like different areas. Some fish like warmer water, so they stay in the Pacific Ocean or the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean Sea. And some fish like colder waters, and they will stay in the Atlantic and the North Atlantic and the Arctic or the Baltic. Um, some like a little less salt, so they'll stay in the Mediterranean Sea. Um, Some just like to travel around, so they'll go from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea to the Atlantic Ocean, and they'll just swim all over the world. So some fish you'll find everywhere, and some fish you only find in certain areas. It just depends. And the sea dragons are in charge of making sure the fish stay where they're supposed to stay. They will tell, the hammerhead sharks, no, you can't go into the Mediterranean Ocean. That's not where you belong. Or they will tell the white sharks that you don't belong in the Red Sea. That's not where you belong. You belong here in the Atlantic and the Pacific and the Gulf. That's where you stay. You can go up to the Bering Sea because it's nice and cold and people don't bother you up there, and it is what it is. While they're out there, they did go up to the Bering Sea and they saw a friend of Elysia's. And that friend was a white shark, the great white shark, the grandfather of all white sharks. He is estimated to be over 400 years old. And he sits there and just lives around Greenland and Iceland. He likes it where it's chilly. Nobody bothers him up there. There's plenty of food for him to munch on. Doesn't really like people that much. He will eat a couple of them, just if they get in the way. But I mean, he leaves, he lives up there. He leaves people alone. They leave him alone. And he goes down and they see the great sperm whales that are the biggest whales out there, and the big blue whales, which are some. And whales, believe it or not, are not fish. They are mammals. They have babies are born alive, not in eggs like most fish are, and they breathe air, just like porpoises and dolphins. They have a hole on the top of their head. They go up, they breathe in, they breathe out, they go back and swim. So they are actually a mammal. Contrary to, back in the day, people used to think they were fish. They are not fish, they are mammals. So after this long time of swimming in all the oceans and meeting all the fish and things like that, Elysia took Castell back to his house. And she dropped him off, and he said thank you. He really enjoyed that. He enjoyed seeing the different oceans and the different places, and said, there are any other places I could see. And Alicia said, well, I'll talk to Aaron and let him know that, you enjoyed your trip and you had fun, and you were okay. You didn't give me any trouble. You didn't give me any reason to eat you or drop you off on an island in the middle of the ocean and leave you there and have someone else come and find you, which could have done. But I'll talk to Aaron. I'll find him, and he hides sometimes, but I know where to find him. And we'll sit there and see if he's got another friend. Aaron's got friends all over, all kinds of different dragons. He's a very popular type of dragon. And we'll find another place, and we'll find another dragon for you, and he'll find someone else to take you somewhere. So just remember to bring gifts. Dragons like books, so if you keep up with your history of books, they will most definitely appreciate it. Don't bring too many more cookbooks. Most dragons, just their one meal is a barbecue, and that's it. They don't really. Well, I find cooking interesting because I cook different things. A lot of the dragons, they cook one thing one way. It's usually charbroiled. So you behave yourself, and in 3 days, Aaron will come back with another dragon, and I don't know who it's going to be, but he'll come back with someone, and they'll educate you on something else or take you somewhere else. So you just behave yourself.